Good afternoon. I'm a believer in caller and response. Good afternoon. Thank you. Today, I want to challenge you to rethink health. Over the next 14 minutes and 33 seconds, I plan to create a new way for you to look at and talk about health. The best way for me to do this is to let you in on one of the best kept and worst kept secrets. Your health, it's not an accident. It's a production of society, this society. So what is health? If I was to ask every person in this room to take out a piece of paper and write down their definition of health, you'd be surprised to find the diversity of answers in the room. So how would you define it? How do you describe it? Is health for one person the same as it is for someone else? Is health merely the absence of disease or infirmity? Well, the World Health Organization tells us that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And since they are the World Health Organization, I'm inclined to believe them. Before I knew how to define health, health became really important to me. Yes, that's me. My mom will be so happy that I included this picture. I'm posing in front of my grandfather's car, circa 1973. And these are my grandparents. That's moms and pops on their wedding day in December of 1943. I was blessed to grow up in a multi-generational household in New York. I'm a child of Jamaican immigrants, which makes me Jamaican. That means that I was born in America, and no, I don't want to be president, and I know where my birth certificate is. And I was raised in a household that looked like most other households in the 1970s. But if you listened closely to our accents, if you listened to the conversations, the Britishisms, as I like to call them, if you smelled our dinner, if you listened to our music, you would have been lucky enough to get a taste of Jamaica. My grandparents had a lot to do with my upbringing. My grandmother stopped working when I was born so that I would never have to go to a babysitter when my parents were at work. I actually chose to spend my time with my grandparents as opposed to spending time with my friends. They listened to big band music. They played Scrabble with me all the time. And to them, I was like American Express. They never left home without me. Fast forward to my sophomore year in college. I'm not sure how it happened, but my grandparents seemed to get old overnight. More trips to the doctors, more days when I would get phone calls in the dorm, and Lord knows we all love to get phone calls in the dorm from home, of my parents talking to me about moms and pops' health challenges. Of course, with the suggestion that I should call and check on them. During that time, I became very aware of health. I was compelled to understand how it worked and why it wasn't working for everyone. Well, this is a special moment and a special time for me and hopefully for you, because after 20 years and working in more communities than I can count, I finally have a clue. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to step out on a limb and say that I have an explanation for how health works in America. Your health is not an accident. It is a production of society. The science tells us that your health, it's 10 to 20% genetic, 30 to 40% based on personal behavior, and 40 to 50% based on systems that we call the social determinants of health. So let's start with genetics because I think that's a pretty straightforward one. With regard to genetics in 2014, it's still the luck of the draw. While there are people around the world that are working on being able to control and manipulate genes, it's not happening today, and I'm doubtful that they'll be able to bring it to scale while most of us in this room are still alive. With regard to personal behavior, things like, do you eat right, diet, exercise, engage in risky behavior, smoke, do you go to the doctor, do you get your teeth cleaned? Well, we know we have some control in the form of choices and decisions that we make every day that either lead us towards health, well-being, and quality of life, or towards illness, disease, and early death. What I really want to focus on is the last category, the 40 to 50% of our health that stems from systems. what public health calls the social determinants of health. These systems that are determined by policy are things like housing, transportation, education, employment, structural racism and privilege, the built environment, access to care, access to technology, and poverty. They help to determine our place in society, literally and figuratively. They determine the neighborhood in which we live, the quality of the education we receive, how much money we make, what access we have to opportunities. They influence even how much stress you experience on the highway because of your commute every day. They dictate whether or not you have access to a grocery store that has affordable fresh fruits and vegetables. These are the systems that create the context within which you live your life, make your choices, and make your decisions. So let me give you an example. My organization, Common Health Action, has been working in Mississippi for quite some time. The interesting thing is that although we're a public health organization, the majority of our work in Mississippi focuses very much on education. The reason is that education, particularly K through 12 education, is one of the biggest predictors of health outcome in America. So think about what you've heard about Mississippi. They have a historically broken educational system with low educational attainment compared to the rest of the nation. Now think about what you've heard about the health of Mississippians. They have the worst health outcomes and chronic conditions in the country in so many different categories. So here's what we know to be true. If we don't fix education in Mississippi, we will never fix health in Mississippi, because the data say that the more education you have, the greater opportunity you will have to be healthy. So it holds true that even if you take twins, same genetics, and they make the same great choices, except for one. One twin decides to drop out of high school, and the other goes on to complete college. The reality is that they will more than likely have very different health outcomes. The reality is that the college-educated twin will more than likely live longer and have a better quality of life. There's also another alarming correlation between education and health. Recent studies have found that the least educated people in our society, particularly uneducated white women without high school diplomas, have lost 5 years of life between 1990 and 2008 in terms of their life expectancy. Again, education is one of the biggest predictors of health outcomes. If we don't fix education, we can't fix health. Here's another example. In Wayne County, Michigan, they have some of the worst birth outcomes for African American women in the country. For decades, they've spent millions of dollars on preconception care, interconception care, prenatal care, in-home visits. And decades later, guess what? Wayne County, Michigan still has some of the worst birth outcomes in the country. Recognizing that these rates are unacceptably high, they've decided to take a new approach to trying to end the trend. They've decided to start looking at the social determinants of health in Wayne County, Michigan, to understand what does it mean for women and for their birth outcomes. These determinants that they're considering have to do with education, employment, and structural racism, and their connections to income inequality that's being experienced by women in Wayne County, Michigan. So in public health, the determinants of health, again, housing, transportation, education, employment, the built environment, access to technology, access to healthcare, and poverty are often talked about as the upstream causes of health outcomes. So let's take a look at what I'll call the stream of life. Now, look at the bottom of the stream and imagine that at the bottom of the stream, you see people floating who are sick, injured, and suffering from chronic disease. This is the area in which you will find traditional Western medicine. This is where we resuscitate, medicate, treat, and operate on those people in order to combat illness, injury, disease, and early death. Now, if I'm walking by the stream and I see these people in the stream, I'm probably going to try to scoop them out. And then I'd probably go look for some medical help. On the way to find a doctor or the nurse, I'm going to start asking myself some questions. How did these people get in the stream to begin with? Where did they get put in the stream? When did they get put in the stream? Who put them in the stream, and why would they have put them in the stream? Obviously, we need to go further upstream to understand the point of entry. So after I return with the medical team and the medical help, I'll go upstream to investigate. Well, when I go upstream, this is where you'll find traditional public health. There are close to 3,000 health departments around the country that carry out various functions, from food inspection to environmental health, and many other things. Traditional public health works to prevent and treat disease and injury as it promotes, protects, and prolongs life. The public health workforce does health education, they do surveillance of outbreaks, and all the things that we need to keep us safe in society. Public health is what got us washing our hands, thank God for that, vaccinating our babies, and using condoms in no particular order. So let's pause for a second. I don't think this is the point where people ended up in the stream either. So it looks like we have to go even further upstream. And this is where we have to begin to look at the determinants of health again. These are the things that provided the context within which the people at the bottom of the stream lived their lives and made their decisions. And these determinants are shaped and driven by policies that either support health, well-being, and quality of life, or lead to illness, disease, and early death. So let's go back to my original premise. Your health is not an accident. It's a production of society. It's based 10 to 20% on genetics, 30 to 40% personal behavioral choices, and the other 40% of your health is based on the determinants of health. And here's why it's so important. If the determinants of health are shaped and driven by policy, then all policy is health policy. Transportation policy is health policy. Housing policy is health policy. Economic policy is health policy. Built environment policy is health policy. That means that we have to stop looking at health with this oversimplified equation of personal behavioral choice and access to care. It means that every policymaker plays a role in the production of the public's health. It means that every single one of us plays a role in the creation of opportunities for health and neighborhood conditions for health. It means that when we see that people are sick or suffering from chronic disease, we can't default into this space that's about bad personal behavior, bad genes. This is a both-and proposition, and we have to consider the role that the determinants of health play in those chronic conditions. It means that if education is the biggest predictor of health outcome, then every teacher in America is part of a lay public health workforce. It means that every employer, whether they know it or not, is a part of a lay public health workforce. It means that every person working in waste management is part of a lay public health workforce. And guess what? They don't even know it. They don't know that they are part of the most visible and invisible production of society, health. So now that you know this, what can you do? Well, there's a saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. Guess what? That's what we've been doing in the fields of medicine and health for generations. Sure, we've advanced. Yes, we've innovated. And we've definitely saved lives and increased life expectancy. But our progress has been hampered by our limited awareness of the production of the public's health. To improve health outcomes for every population in America, we need to take the lead in spreading the knowledge about the determinants of health to other sectors, because let's face it, everybody sees us as the health people. If we don't talk about it, no one will. If we don't understand it, no one will. This is an opportunity for us to lead the nation in a perspective transformation about health and to change the national narrative from one that is solely focused on personal behavior and access to care to include the understanding of the important roles of the determinants of health. To do that, each of us needs to figure out what our role is in the production of health. We have to look upstream from our daily jobs, whether that's delivering care or managing a facility. And once we understand that, we have to make our decisions with the upstream causes of illness, disease, injury, and early death in mind. We have to engage in policies, practices, and procedures that promote and support health within community and advocate for changes that create neighborhood conditions for health. Now you know that your health is not an accident. It is a production of society. And while we have to continue our work at the bottom of the stream and there will always be a need for it. Maybe, just maybe, if we wander upstream every now and then, the need to medicate, resuscitate, treat, and operate won't be so great. Maybe we will be able to spend more time supporting longevity and quality of life instead of continuously waging war against illness, disease, and early death. Because if our mission is that all people achieve their best health, shouldn't we put ourselves out of business? Shouldn't we want to not be here again next year? Your health is not an accident. It is a production of society, and the production continues. What's your role? Thank you.